Hey, what's going on guys, I'm Primal Liquid and welcome to my review for Cyberdimension Neptunia for Goddess Online. Now, before we get started, I do just want to quickly mention two things. Number one, this video is entirely my opinion, and so you may agree or disagree with me, and do not take everything I say here as a fact. I would suggest watching a couple of reviews to see what kind of picture multiple people are painting. And secondly, I just would like to mention that I did receive the review copy of this game for free from Idea Factory. However, that has no effect on my scores for this game. So, to kick things off, I just want to say I hope you all like stupidly long loading screens, because every single time you load the game up, you're going to get hit by this screen, which takes about 3 to 4 minutes to fully load. Now, with that gripe out of the way, let's move on to the story. So, as the game begins, Neptune and the other CPUs have just logged into a new MMO called For Goddess Online. The main task is to battle monsters while fighting your way through the areas, collecting 4 sacred relics in order to summon the 4 goddesses from the Divine Realm to help stop the Demon King who has revived. And while this sums up the first half of the game, sadly about halfway through this is basically all but forgotten as you deal with somebody hacking the 4 Goddess Online servers, which basically takes over the story. In fact, it takes over to the point that you don't pick up the Demon King story again until the post-game, which is very disappointing. They set up the hacker side story nicely in conjunction with the 4 Goddess story, however, basically just abandoned the 4 Goddess story in favour of the hacking side. Now personally, I would have much rather they played them out at the same time, as there was more than enough opportunities to do so. Now, as for the quality, well, the comedy aspect is, as you would expect from a Neptunia game, it's pure comedy gold. Not the best in the series, but not the worst either, and you would most definitely get some good chuckles out of it. Sadly, that's all the good I can say about the story though. In terms of actual story content, it's incredibly bland and I often found myself quite bored. It's much more like the stories of the side games like Hyper Devotion Noir, Verse Sega Hard Girls, or the Verse Zombie game, and is a far cry from stories like the main series. Now, couple that with a very, very annoying gender-bended Kirito, and no, I'm not joking, it's literally a gender-bended Kirito, and some spoiled princess who wants everybody to do everything for her, but she reaps the rewards, and you have for a very mixed gaming experience if you want to play just for the story. Now, with that said, let's move on to the gameplay. Now, sadly, there's not really a lot of positives here. The game plays as a real-time battle game where you can use a basic combo attack, or you can register up to 8 skills to use with the L1 button. If you've played any of the Sword Art Online games, then just imagine that, but with Neptune. However, the combat is clunky at best. Melee characters are at a massive disadvantage, and magic is all but forced to be used until you can essentially one-shot mobs. The camera is terrible because in order to actually fight mobs somewhat effectively, you need to lock onto them. However, when you do that with a melee character, the camera freaks out extremely often, to the point I actually had to switch who I played with to Uni, who uses a ranged weapon, simply due to the fact playing with a melee was giving me a really bad migraine due to the camera constantly freaking out whenever I needed to fight something. Now, in terms of the battles themselves, there's nothing too interesting to note. They are overly easy but drawn out, simply due to the high defense and high break values. However, if for some reason your controlled character was to die, instead of letting you switch to one of the 3 other characters who are with you, it instantly sends you back to town, meaning you have to do the entire dungeon over again. The monsters are boring. Now, I know Neptunia games are no strangers to reusing assets, however, it's become a joke in this game. There are about 11 normal monsters and 7 or 8 bosses, and that's all you fight throughout the entire game. The very first dungeon you have a dogo with 300 HP, and the final dungeons you have the same dogo but with 2000 HP. Now, there are a few times where they've given the mobs a colour change and changed the name as well. However, that's not all that often, and it's still only 3 maximum variants. But don't let that change fool you. They have all the same attacks and drops as their counterparts. Not something I'm really that impressed about, considering the game is a full retail priced game. Now, throughout the game, there's quite a lot of chests. However, you're not going to find much gear in them. as 90% of the chests just contain cosmetic items. The problem? You can buy all those items in the city at the very start of the game. The only difference is the colour of them. So if you're not interested in changing your costumes and sticking 10 different pairs of glasses on, then you're not going to get much in terms of rewards from hunting out the chests. Now, when you do start getting those elusive weapons and armors though, don't even think about upgrading them, because there's only two ways to do so. You can farm the boss monsters, which have an obscenely low drop chance, even with the most expensive drop rate buff, or you can try and find 3 other people to help you in multiplayer, where there are rewards for completing missions. The downside here is that in the 2 weeks I've had this game, I've never seen anybody else online. Couple that with the fact that if the party leader dies, it's an instant game over for everybody, and it kicks you back out to single player. So if you don't get all the items you need in the first week of the game's release, the chances of you getting them via multiplayer will be slim to none. Graphically though, the game is a mixed bag for me. Environments leave a lot to be desired, and just makes me think this was a Vita game that got ported over to the PS4 and PC. Honestly, the fact that the game is only on PS4 and PC, but the level of detail is so low, just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. However, the artwork, CGs and character models are very nice and crisp, the colouring is nice and very distinct, and in the ever elusive animated cutscenes, the game has the best I've seen in terms of actual animation that's gone into them, apart from Mega Dimension V2. The music is nice and easy to listen to, however it is a bit repetitive, but I never got annoyed by it or had a track that I just didn't like. But I do think they overuse some of the soundtracks. Now, in terms of enjoyment, the game is a nice pastime and is something that you can just jump on for an hour and then, you know, just go do other things. However, I don't think it's worth full retail price. The game lasts about 12 to 15 hours for the main story. Add on an extra hour to that for the true end, and then another 5 to 10 hours for a 100% run. So about 25 hours max to get the Platinum Trophy and do everything the game has to offer. Now, I've given my opinion on the main points now, so let's do a quick TLDR for the good and the bad. So we'll start with the good. More NetNap is always a win. The comedy is pretty decent and will have you laughing quite a bit. It's a good way to kill 20-ish hours. If you're a trophy hunter, then be glad the platinum is very, very easy. And finally, no missables. With that said, let's move on to the bad, and sadly, there's a lot. So the camera when locking onto monsters is terrible and constantly freaks out by moving, zooming in or rotating constantly when you're close to the monster in question. Coupled with the fact that half the time the lock-on won't even detect monsters if you're too close or too far, or if your camera is just slightly to the side, below or above the monster. Gameplay is dull and boring to the point you just wish they kept the normal Neptunia battle system. The story is bland, boring and disjointed and executed very poorly. Its only saving grace is the comedy. The game is basically a reskinned Sword Art Online game, from the HUD, in the dungeons, to the way you battle and control your characters. Couple that with the gender-bended Kirito and his annoying pal Asuka, who pops up about halfway through, and you just think the devs wanted to clone a Sword Art game. The assets are reused far too often, considering how the game is full retail price. A stupidly long loading screen whenever you load up the game. It crashes often. While I was doing my playthrough, it crashed so many times that I ended up just starting and stopping my recordings in town, so that if it did crash, my videos wouldn't be disjointed. And finally, it's Bug City. I've had quests not working, getting stuck on top of monsters, getting stuck on top of ledges. When I was in post-game doing my quest cleanup, I had a story cutscene play that's from near enough the very start of the game, and no, it wasn't a slightly different cutscene. I checked the recordings side by side, it was the exact same story cutscene. Well, I think that's enough salt for now, so let's get to scoring, shall we? So for the story, I rate this a 5 out of 10, and honestly, it's only that high because of the comedy. For the gameplay, it's another 5 out of 10. It's not the worst I've played, but it's also far from the best. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I wasn't forced into using Uni because of the camera and lock-on problems. Now, graphically will be a 7 out of 10. The environments are pretty meh, but the models and CG artwork are extremely well done, and I do have to give them props here. Music is getting a 6 out of 10. It's nice, but some tracks are overused way too much. But even with that, I didn't really find a track I overly disliked. And finally, the enjoyment factor will be getting another 6 out of 10. It's an okay game to kill some time, and the constant comedy eased me through the terrible story. But I would have enjoyed it more if the lock-on and the camera problems didn't force me into using a ranged character, as I would have liked to try one of the many melee characters. Now, with all that said, the final score is a 6 out of 10. The game's okay, but it's not worth full retail price. It's more of a side game than a main game, and I strongly suggest holding off until it's cheaper, because at full retail it just feels like a quick cash grab game. So I suggest waiting until you can pick it up for between £15 to £20 or equivalent. But that's going to end the review here. Just let me know down below what you guys think of the game, or your opinions on what I've discussed in this video. But as always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.